Judicial siege in Seoul, Supreme Court under coordinated political pressure. Summary: on September 15th, the Democratic Party of Korea escalated direct political pressure on Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae. Party leader Jung Chong-rae demanded his resignation, citing an alleged judicial coup in the May overturning of President Lee Jae-myung's conviction. This coincided with the presidential office suggesting, then softening, agreement with calls for Cho's removal. The pressure now includes proposals for a special tribunal for sedition, backed by legislation that would allow the National Assembly to intervene in judicial case allocation. Additional sources confirm that impeachment of the Chief Justice is openly discussed, and that the ruling party views the special tribunal not only as an institutional reform, but also as a tool to discipline or isolate judges perceived as hostile. The opposition denounced the move as unconstitutional, likening it to Erdogan-style purges of the judiciary. BBIU structured opinion. The events unfolding in South Korea in 2025 represent not a judicial scandal, but a political strategy to discipline the Supreme Court. No evidence has emerged that Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae or the Grand Bench acted improperly in the May 2025 decision. The ruling was a textbook overturn and remand, consistent with due process. The Democratic Party's fixation on Cho personally, branding the decision a judicial coup, calling for his resignation and floating impeachment, demonstrates that the true conflict is not legal but structural. The ruling party's objectives are clear: neutralize an independent actor who may resist legislative-engineered tribunals, institutionalize control through the proposed Sedition Tribunal, embedding legislative influence in case allocation, send a disciplinary signal to the judiciary as a whole: neutrality will be punished, alignment will be rewarded, shield the presidency from judicial vulnerability by eroding the independence of the last countervailing institution. International parameters, UN Basic Principles on Judicial Independence, the Venice Commission, and the Rule of Law Index are explicit. Judges must be free from political interference, secure in tenure, and insulated from retaliation. South Korea, ranked within the top 20 globally for rule of law over the past decade, risks sliding into the category of states where the judiciary becomes an instrument rather than an arbiter. This is the path Argentina took with its Corte automática in the 1990s, and Turkey after 2016, a formal democracy hollowed out by judicial capture. The broader implication is stark: South Korea is entering a structural descent. A democracy without an independent judiciary ceases to be substantive. It becomes procedural, a facade where elections legitimize concentration of power. The Democratic Party's assault on Cho Hee-dae thus marks a turning point, not the resolution of a judicial dispute, but the deliberate dismantling of constitutional balance. Annex: Argentina's automatic court and long-term consequences. 1. Genesis of the Corte Automática 1990. President Carlos Menem promotes a constitutional reform, expanding the Supreme Court from 5 to 9 members. Mechanism: Menem's party, PJ, had congressional majority, enabling swift appointment of 4 new loyal justices. Outcome: a stable 6-3 majority in favor of the executive in virtually all major cases popularly labeled the Corte Automática. 2. Period of judicial subordination, 1990-2002. Courts systematically validated presidential decrees of necessity and urgency, DNUs, large-scale privatizations, constitutional reform of 1994, which enabled presidential re-election. Trust collapse. By late 1990s, the court was viewed as an extension of the executive. During Argentina's 2001-2002 economic crisis, the judiciary was considered complicit in enabling unchecked executive power. 3. Attempted reconstruction, 2003 to 2010. President Nestor Kirchner initiated a judicial renewal, pressured for resignations of Menem-era justices, appointed new members with higher professional legitimacy, e.g. Carmen Argibay, Eugenio Zaffaroni. Public confidence improved temporarily, but the stain of politicization persisted. 4. Chronic problems, 2010s to 2020s. The court shrank back to 5 members but has often operated with fewer, today only 4 active justices. Long-standing political polarization makes 2/3 Senate approval for new appointments nearly impossible. Every appointment is interpreted as a partisan maneuver. Risk of 2-2 stalemates on key constitutional cases. Delays and uncertainty in rulings undermine institutional credibility. 5. Persistent consequences, 2025. Erosion of legitimacy. 35 years after the Corte automática, the Argentine Supreme Court is still not viewed as fully independent. Structural paralysis. Vacancies remain unresolved due to partisan gridlock. Institutional fragility. The court's authority is weakened, limiting its capacity to act as final arbiter in constitutional crises. International credibility. Investors, multilateral institutions, and foreign courts perceive Argentina's judiciary as unstable. Entrenched distrust. Public perception assumes the court is politicized, regardless of its actual rulings. 6. Lessons for Korea, 2025. Speed of capture versus slowness of recovery. Menem consolidated control in less than 1 year. Argentina has not fully recovered in over 30 years. Path dependency. Once independence is broken, future government a judiciary seen as partisan. Democratic cost. Undermines separation of powers and corrodes democratic credibility. Economic cost. Raises sovereign risk, deters investment, complicates long-term contracts. Final note. Argentina's trajectory shows judicial capture leaves generational scars. South Korea's attempted disciplining of its Supreme Court in 2025 risks triggering a similar cycle. Rapid subordination followed by decades of paralysis and democratic erosion.
Welcome to the Biopharma Business Intelligence Unit, where symbolic integrity meets strategic clarity. At BBIU, we go beyond the headlines to decode the structural forces behind global biopharma, AI, and economic realignment. If you value precision, verification, and symbolic depth, this channel is for you. Subscribe now to access our weekly briefings, dossiers, and intelligence reports, and consider joining our institutional tier to unlock early warning systems, custom metrics, and exclusive strategic insight. You're not just listening, you're entering the future of epistemic intelligence. www.biopharmabusinessintelligenceunit.com